She was sacred among her people but chose by a human that wanted virgin alien asterisk. The crystal priestess twin sons of Lumina cast prismatic light through the temple's crystal dome, painting Nishavel's pale blue skin with rainbow patterns as she completed her morning communion. Her slender fingers traced ancient symbols in the air, each movement precise and practiced. The gathered crystallians watched in reverent silence, their translucent bodies barely moving lest they disturb the sacred energy currents. "The veil between worlds thins," Nishavel announced, her voice like wind through chimes. "The ancestors are pleased with our devotion." Elder Tormal nodded, his crystalline growths glittering with approval. "You honor us, Sacred One." Nishavel bowed her head, feeling the familiar weight of expectation settle upon her shoulders. As a child, she had been identified as a perfect vessel, a rare crystallian, whose internal resonance matched the planet's core frequency. Such vessels appeared once every 3 generations, and their purpose was singular, to maintain harmony between Lumina and its people. When the ceremony concluded, Nishavel retreated to her private chambers. Only here, away from adoring eyes, could she move without calculated grace, speak without measured wisdom. She pressed her forehead against the cool crystal wall and exhaled slowly. "Another beautiful communion," came a voice from the doorway. Nishavel straightened immediately. "Thank you, Jorel." Her attendant, appointed since her ascension 10 cycles ago, entered with a tray of nutrient crystals. His eyes never quite met hers. "No one's did anymore. The council wishes to inform you that the human delegation arrives tomorrow," Jorel said, placing the tray on a floating pedestal. "They request your blessing for the diplomatic exchange." "Humans?" Nishavel's interest peaked. Visitors from Earth were rare on Lumina, the journey too costly for casual travel. "Scientists and cultural observers," Jorel explained. "The council has prepared extensive protocols to ensure they don't disturb your sanctity." Nishavel nodded, though something in her resonated discordantly. "Always protocols, always distance. Will I meet them?" she asked, trying to sound merely curious rather than eager. Jorel looked surprised. "They'll be permitted to observe your sunset communion from the visitors' gallery, of course, but direct interaction would be inappropriate. Your energy must remain pure for the upcoming alignment festival." After Jorel departed, Nishavel approached her reflection pool. The face that stared back was beautiful by crystallian standards, features delicately formed, eyes large and luminous with flecks of silver. Yet it was a beauty few ever truly saw, obscured by her title and purpose. She dipped her fingers into the pool, disrupting the perfect image. What would it be like, she wondered, to be seen as more than a vessel, to be chosen for herself, not for the resonance she carried? That night, while the settlement slept, Nishavel slipped from the temple, something she hadn't done since childhood. She followed the luminous path to the sacred springs, where energy currents surfaced as glowing pools no one would dare disturb her. Here it was forbidden to all but the most spiritually attuned. She knelt beside the largest pool, its surface rippling with light. "Is this all I am?" she whispered to the waters. "A conduit? A symbol?" The springs offered no answer, only the gentle pulse of ancient energies. Nishavel closed her eyes and did something forbidden. She reached beyond the prescribed meditation patterns, seeking not the collective consciousness of her people, but her own deepest desires. In that moment of true communion with herself, Nishavel made a silent vow. When the humans arrived, she would find a way to be seen not as the Sacred One, but as herself, whatever the consequences might be. Earth Emissarith diplomatic vessel descended through Lumina's atmosphere, its hull reflecting the planet's crystalline landscape. Inside, Marcus Reed reviewed his notes one final time. After years studying xenoanthropology, this assignment represented the pinnacle of his career. First official contact with the notoriously private crystallians. "Remember," Director Hayashi warned from across the cabin, "their society operates on strict spiritual hierarchies. One misstep could end our mission before it begins." Marcus nodded, though his approach to fieldwork had always been more intuitive than rigid. "I understand the protocols, Director, especially regarding their Sacred One." Hayashi continued, "You may observe her from a distance, but direct communication is forbidden. She's essentially their living deity." "A person isn't a deity," Marcus replied quietly, "no matter what role they serve. The reception party awaited them at the landing platform. Tall, willowy beings with semi-translucent skin that caught the light like prisms. Elder Tormal stepped forward, his elaborate crystal adornments marking his status. "Welcome to Lumina," he intoned formally. "May your presence honor the harmony." The diplomatic pleasantries unfolded exactly as briefed. Marcus observed the Crystallians' careful movements, the deliberate cadence of their speech, storing every detail while the director handled official exchanges. Their hosts guided them to their quarters, structures grown rather than built, walls of living crystal that hummed with subtle energy. Marcus was provided a cultural attendant named Perith, who explained the settlement's layout with rehearsed precision. "And the temple?" Marcus asked, pointing to the massive dome at the center of the settlement. Perith's posture stiffened. "The Sacred One conducts communion at sunset. You may observe from the outer gallery." That evening, Marcus joined the others in the temple's visitor section, separated from the main chamber by a translucent barrier. The space filled with Crystallians, arranged in concentric circles according to some hierarchy Marcus couldn't yet decipher. Then she entered, and the collective murmur ceased. Marcus had seen images, but they captured nothing of her presence. Nishavale moved like water, her ceremonial attire crystals suspended in a field of energy flowing around her slender form. Unlike the other Crystallians, whose expressions remained serene and distant, something in her eyes seemed searching, almost restless. The communion began, Nishavale weaving complex patterns of light between her hands. Marcus found himself less interested in the ritual itself than in the brief moments between prescribed movements, tiny hesitations, subtle shifts in her expression when she thought no one was watching. "Magnificent, isn't she?" whispered Hayashi. "Their perfect vessel." Perfect for what? Marcus wondered aloud, earning a sharp glance from his superior. After the ceremony, while the others returned to their quarters, Marcus felt drawn to explore. He followed a luminous path leading away from the settlement, eventually discovering a series of glowing pools nestled among crystal formations. He sat beside one, mesmerized by the patterns swirling beneath its surface. Earth's diplomatic corps would disapprove of this unauthorized wandering, but something about this place felt necessary to understand. Humans are not permitted at the sacred springs. Marcus startled at the musical voice. Standing several meters away was Nishavale herself, without her ceremonial adornments, looking both regal and somehow vulnerable. Protocol demanded he leave immediately with profuse apologies. Instead, Marcus stayed seated and said, "I didn't mean to trespass. It's beautiful here, peaceful." Her eyes widened slightly at his casual response. "You know who I am, the Sacred One." He acknowledged, then added, "But that's your role, not your name." A strange expression crossed her features, surprise, perhaps even pleasure. "I am Nishavale, Marcus Reed," he offered, "Earth's cultural observer." "You should fear punishment for being here," she said, though there was no threat in her tone. Marcus smiled slightly. "Are you going to punish me?" For a moment, she seemed taken aback. Then, unexpectedly, her lips curved into a small smile. "No, but others might." "Then I'll be careful," he replied, "though I'd like to understand why this place is forbidden." Nishavale hesitated, then moved closer, her steps silent on the crystalline ground. "These springs connect directly to Lumina's core energy. Only those attuned to the highest frequencies should commune here. Like you, yes," she said, then added more quietly, "always like me." Something in her voice, a note of resignation, perhaps caught Marcus's attention. Before he could respond, she glanced toward the settlement. "You should return before you're missed," Nishavale advised. "The diplomatic path is carefully arranged." Marcus stood, brushing crystal dust from his clothing. "And if I wanted to learn more about Lumina beyond the diplomatic path," their eyes met, and for a moment, all protocol and cultural divide seemed to fade. "Return tomorrow night," she said, the words barely audible. "If you truly wish to understand." Then she was gone, moving with such fluid grace she seemed to dissolve into the light of the springs. Marcus stood alone, knowing he'd just stepped far outside mission parameters and yet feeling, for the first time since landing, that he might actually learn something real about this crystalline world and its sacred, solitary priestess. Forbidden conversations for 3 consecutive nights. Marcus slipped away from the human quarters to meet Nishavale at the sacred springs. Each time, he expected to find the area guarded or empty, but she always waited, seated beside the largest pool, her form haloed by its ambient glow. Tonight, she greeted him with less reserve than before. "I wasn't certain you would continue these visits," she admitted. "Your director seems quite committed to following our council's restrictions." "Diplomats follow protocols," Marcus replied, settling beside her at a respectful distance. "Anthropologists follow curiosity." "And which are you?" Nishavale asked, studying him with those luminous eyes. "Officially, the former, but my heart belongs to the latter." He gestured to the springs. "No official record will ever capture what it feels like to sit here, watching these patterns form and dissolve. Some things must be experienced." Nishavale nodded slowly. "My people believe understanding comes from observation, not participation. It's why visitors are kept at a distance from our sacred practices." "And you, what do you believe?" She hesitated, unaccustomed to being asked for personal opinions. "I think true understanding requires both. To observe with respect, but also to feel with openness." Their conversation flowed more freely than previous nights. Marcus described Earth's diverse cultures and landscapes, while Nishavale explained the intricate relationship between crystallians and their living planet. Unlike the formal explanations offered in diplomatic sessions, her words carried personal connection and occasional criticism. "The energy currents are changing," she confided, "growing more erratic. The elders insist our traditional communions are sufficient, but I sense something different is needed." "Have you told them this?" Nishavale's laughter was like chimes in a gentle breeze. "My purpose is to communicate with the planet, not question the elders' wisdom. They value me as a conduit, not a counselor." "That seems wasteful," Marcus observed. "To have someone so connected to Lumina's essence, yet limit what insights you can share." She looked at him with surprise. "Most outsiders find our traditions admirable. Admiring something doesn't mean accepting it without question," he replied. "On Earth, many beautiful traditions evolved when someone dared to imagine a different way." Silence fell between them, comfortable yet charged with unspoken possibilities. "What is it like?" Nishavale finally asked, "to move through the universe freely?" "Choosing your own path." Marcus considered her question carefully. "Freedom can be disorienting. Without prescribed purpose, we must discover our own meaning. But there's joy in that discovery, in the choosing itself, even when you choose wrongly. Especially then," he smiled. "Our mistakes often teach us more than our successes." Nishavale extended her hand over the glowing pool, letting the energy play between her fingers. "Tomorrow is the Alignment Festival. I will lead the communion that synchronizes our collective consciousness with Lumina's core. Thousands will join their minds with mine." "That sounds intense," Marcus said, trying to imagine such a profound connection. "It is the highest expression of my purpose." Her voice held a note of resignation. "Afterward, the council will announce my spiritual complement, the one chosen to share my life and strengthen my connection to the energy currents." Marcus felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "You don't choose your own partner?" "Sacred ones never have," she explained. "Our resonance is too precious to risk disharmony. The elders use ancient algorithms to identify the most compatible match. And you're content with that?" Nishavale turned to him fully then, her expression more vulnerable than he'd yet seen. "Until recently, I never questioned it. My path was clear, my duty defined. Then you arrived, speaking of choices and different ways, looking at me as what?" Marcus asked softly. "As a person," she whispered. "Not a symbol or a vessel, just Nishavale." The energy in the pool between them pulsed more intensely, responding to her emotion. Without thinking, Marcus reached across, his fingers stopping just short of hers above the glowing surface. "Because that's who you are to me," he said. For a breathless moment, they remained frozen in that almost touch, the space between them charged with possibility. Then, slowly, deliberately, Nishavale moved her hand the final distance until their fingertips met, a spark of energy, whether from the pool or between them. Marcus couldn't tell dance where they touched. Her skin was cool and smooth against his, the contact simple yet profound. "No one has touched me by choice in 10 cycles," she said, voice barely audible. Only ritual gestures, prescribed contacts. Marcus wanted to say more, to acknowledge the significance of this moment, but footsteps sounded on the crystal path nearby. They separated instantly, Nishavel rising in one fluid motion. "Tomorrow after the festival," she whispered urgently, "meet me here one last time. I need to." The approaching guard called out, "Sacred One, Elder Tormal requires your presence for festival preparations." Nishavel composed herself. Once again becoming the serene priestess, she departed with the guard, leaving Marcus alone. By the springs, his fingertips still tingling from a touch that had broken centuries of tradition. Choiceth Alignment Festival transformed the entire settlement into a cathedral of light. Crystal structures amplified and channeled energy currents, while crystallians in ceremonial attire arranged themselves in geometric patterns. Around the central temple, Marcus and the Earth delegation were positioned on an elevated platform, offering a perfect view while maintaining the required separation. Director Hayashi leaned toward Marcus. "This is unprecedented access. No outsiders have witnessed the alignment in person before." Marcus nodded absently, his attention fixed on the temple entrance. When Nishavel emerged, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Her ceremonial attire was more elaborate than before, a constellation of crystal shards suspended around her in a complex energy field, creating the illusion that she floated rather than walked. "The Sacred One appears particularly radiant today," observed Perith, their cultural attendant, a favorable sign for the compliment announcement. The ritual began with synchronized movements, thousands of crystallians flowing like a single organism. At the center, Nishavel conducted the energy patterns, her gestures creating intricate light formations that spiraled outward. The air itself seemed to vibrate with meaning. As the communion reached its apex, Nishavel ascended to a crystal daze, her voice, amplified by the structure, rolled across the gathering. "The currents flow strong today. Lumina welcomes our consciousness." What followed was unlike anything in human experience, a wave of visible energy, emanating from Nishavel, connecting each crystallian in a web of light. Their bodies became more transparent, internal energies pulsing in growing synchronicity. Marcus watched, mesmerized, as Nishavel's expression shifted subtly. Where the other crystallians appeared transported by serene connection, something like determination flashed across her features. The energy patterns around her fluctuated, briefly disrupting the perfect symmetry. Elder Tormal stepped forward. As the communion concluded, "The Sacred One has carried our consciousness to Lumina's heart," he announced. "Now, as tradition demands, we shall name her spiritual complement." The crowd's anticipation was palpable. Marcus felt his own heart racing, though he told himself it was merely anthropological interest. After careful consideration of resonance patterns, Tormal continued, "The Council has selected Varthan of the Northern Settlement to serve as complement to our Sacred One." A tall, distinguished crystallian stepped forward, his bearing formal and proud. The crowd murmured approval as Varthan ascended the dais and performed a ritual bow. "Before Nishavel, I am honored to be chosen," Varthan stated, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of rehearsed devotion. "My resonance exists to amplify the Sacred One's communion." Nishavel regarded him silently, her expression unreadable. Then, to the shock of all present, she stepped back from his outstretched hands. "I acknowledge the Council's wisdom," she began, her voice steady, "and I honor Varthan's willingness to serve." The traditional response should have followed her acceptance of the compliment. Instead, Nishavel turned to address the entire gathering. "For 10 cycles, I have served as your conduit to luminous energy. I have fulfilled every duty, followed every tradition." Her voice grew stronger. "During today's communion, I sensed a truth within the currents. Lumina itself is changing, evolving beyond our ancient patterns." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. Elder Tormal stepped forward. "Sacred One, this is not the prescribed path is no longer sufficient." Nishavel interrupted. "Something no one had ever done to an elder. Lumina showed me that our future requires new connections, new understandings." Her gaze swept across the gathering, briefly meeting Marcus's eyes before continuing. "I cannot accept a compliment chosen by algorithm. The currents require authenticity, not calculation. The crystalline structures around them began to pulse with unsettled energy, reflecting the collective disquiet. "What you propose is without precedent," Tormal said, his voice tight with restrained anger. "Yes," Nishavel agreed. "Simply, as is the change in Lumina's energy patterns. We must evolve or risk losing our connection entirely." She descended the dais, moving with deliberate steps through the stunned crowd. The perfect formation dissolved as Crystallians stepped back, creating a path. No one had ever seen the Sacred One move among them outside of prescribed rituals. "I choose to seek my own path of connection," she announced, "not rejecting my duties to Lumina, but fulfilling them in a way that honors truth rather than tradition." As she approached the Earth delegation's platform, Director Hayashi whispered, urgently, "What is happening? Is this part of the ceremony?" Marcus didn't answer, transfixed by Nishavel's unwavering approach. She stopped directly before him, ignoring the invisible boundary between their species. "For generations," she said, her voice carrying to all, "we have preserved our ways through isolation and rigid adherence to the past. But the universe continues to expand, and so must we." Then, in a gesture that elicited audible shock, Nishavel extended her hand toward Marcus. "I choose connection. Born of understanding, not obligation. I choose to learn new ways of seeing." The implications were unmistakable. Marcus stood frozen, acutely aware that his response would have diplomatic repercussions beyond anything he was authorized to handle. Director Hayashi hissed, "Read. Don't you dare." But Marcus was already moving forward, guided by something beyond protocol or caution. He took Nishavel's outstretched hand, feeling that same electric connection they'd shared by the springs. "I accept your choice," he said simply. The settlement erupted into chaos. Elder Tormal shouting for guards while other Crystallians began to glow with intensified emotions. Diplomatic staff scrambled to contain the situation. Yet amid the tumult, the crystal structures throughout the settlement began to pulse with a new, harmonious pattern. The energy emanating from Nishavel and Marcus's joined hands spread outward, creating ripples of light that gradually calmed the disturbed currents. "Look," someone cried. The resonance tower. All eyes turned to the settlement's tallest structure, which now shimmered with colors never before seen on Lumina. The sight silenced even the most outraged voices. Elder Tormal stared in disbelief. "This is impossible." "Not impossible," Nishavel replied calmly. "Simply new." New beginning. Diplomatic crisis that followed Nishavel's declaration lasted 3 days. Emergency communications flew between Lumina and Earth. While the Crystallian Council debated continuously, Marcus found himself alternately sequestered for questioning and summoned to observe heated discussions where his presence seemed designed to provoke reactions rather than seek solutions. On the 4th day, an unexpected intervention arrived from Lumina itself. The energy currents throughout the settlement suddenly intensified, flowing in visible streams toward the sacred springs. When elders and diplomats rushed to investigate, they found Nishavel seated calmly beside the largest pool, Marcus at her side, both surrounded by an unprecedented configuration of light patterns. "The springs have never manifested this way," Elder Tormal admitted, his anger giving way to reluctant wonder. Senior scientists confirmed what Nishavel had claimed. Lumina's energy patterns were indeed changing, shifting toward more complex and adaptive forms. The planet itself seemed to be endorsing new approaches to connection. A compromise gradually emerged. Nishavel would retain her position as Sacred One, continuing to serve as conduit between Crystallians and Lumina. However, the rigid traditions governing her life would be reconsidered, beginning with the complement selection. "It is not rejection of my duties," Nishavel explained to the council during the final negotiation. "It is evolution of how those duties are fulfilled." 1 month later, Marcus stood again by the sacred springs, watching the twin moons of Lumina rise above the crystal formations. The diplomatic mission had been extended indefinitely, reframed as a cultural exchange program with Marcus appointed as its primary coordinator. Contemplating the cosmic implications of cultural revolution, Nishavel's voice came from behind him, warm with the touch of humor he'd come to cherish. "Actually," he replied as she joined him, "I was thinking about timing. On Earth, we have a concept called the right place at the right time. Marcus explained, the idea that some connections can only happen when circumstances align perfectly. Nishavale considered this, like the convergence of celestial bodies. Exactly. If I'd come to Lumina a year earlier or later, or if you hadn't already been questioning your traditions, we might have observed each other from appropriate distances, never knowing what might have been. She extended her hand, and Marcus took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining. Physical contact between them still raised eyebrows among traditional crystallians, but the dramatic resonance patterns it produced in nearby crystal formations made objections difficult to maintain. Their connection, it seemed, was literally changing the energy of Lumina itself. The new communal meditation begins tomorrow, Nishavale said. Several humans have volunteered to participate alongside crystallians. Nervous? Marcus asked. She smiled. No, for the first time, I'm conducting a ritual I truly believe in, not merely performing prescribed motions. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the play of light across the springs. Their relationship was still developing, carefully, navigating the space between two vastly different species and cultures. Yet in that navigation, both had found something precious: authenticity that transcended traditional boundaries. The elders have proposed a new title for me, Nishavale mentioned. Instead of Sacred One, they suggest Bridge Between Worlds. Marcus laughed softly, much more accurate, though still quite formal. And what would you call me, if tradition were no concern? She asked. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. Simply Nishavale, the one who chose her own path. The springs around them pulsed with heightened energy, responding to their connection. In that moment, surrounded by light that seemed to celebrate their presence, Marcus leaned forward slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished. Instead, Nishavale moved to meet him halfway, their foreheads touching in a gesture that combined crystallian tradition with human intimacy, neither fully one culture nor the other, but something new and entirely their own. The council fears this is just the beginning of changes, she whispered. They're right, Marcus replied. That's the thing about choosing your own path, you never know exactly where it leads. Nishavale's eyes shimmered with reflected moonlight, and inner certainty. I don't need to know the entire path, only that I chose it freely. Above them, the crystal formations of Lumina glowed with unprecedented patterns, as if the planet itself celebrated this new form of connection. Where there had once been isolation wrapped in reverence, there was now a bridge between worlds, built not by diplomatic protocols or ancient traditions, but by two individuals who dared to see beyond the roles they had been assigned. And in that seeing, they had discovered something sacred in its own right, the profound power of being truly chosen, not for status or symbol, but simply for oneself.